Hagar was a little bit arrogant. She got pregnant, so she became prideful. And that's how a lot of people are. The moment they get some kind of a blessing, they become a little bit boastful. They become proud. They start to think that now they're entitled to, such a ego, and they really build their ego. They feel entitled. They feel offended if they're not treated properly. And so like all of these fleshly desires, they surface, and we begin to think we're something. And so Hagar thought now she's something, because look, she's pregnant and Sarah can't even get pregnant. And so she was walking around despising Sarah. And Sarah just like let her have it. She's like, you know what, girl? She started to treat her harshly. She said, hey, get in line, submit. And I mean, at first it seems like pretty mean. And so Hagar had it enough. She leaves Sarah and says, I'm done with this toxic, abusive authority. And you would think God would come to Hagar and says, yeah, Sarah is so mean. I understand. I'm so glad that you left her. You set some boundaries in your life. Yes, you should write a book and maybe like expose Sarah, do a video on exposing how abusive Sarah is. But actually God comes to Hagar and says, you know what he said? Return and submit. What? Return and submit to a harsh leader? Harsh mistress? I don't want to. She hurt my feelings. But the angel said to Hagar, you should go and submit, not because of you, but because of what you're carrying. What you're carrying is so great, it needs a place where it can be birthed, and it cannot be birthed in the wilderness. You will die here. So for the sake of the potential you're carrying, you need a place where it will be born, and that place cannot be being alone. You need to be in a place planted. But they didn't treat me good, but they were not nice to me. Hagar, you have to swallow your pride, your offense, and you have to go and submit. Why? Because what God is about to do through you requires you to be more committed to God's promise instead of your pride. So many people, they get hurt feelings and they jeopardize, they actually miscarry God's promise because they are super offended and not submissive to whether to their spouse, whether to their employer, whether to their pastor, and they distance themselves. Some of you are actually in the chat right now, and you left the local church because you were not treated right, because you walked like a little diva, and you walked around, very easily offended, allowing the orphan heart to manifest. And so, of course, you got hurt, you got neglected, you got maybe mistreated, and you feel like everyone is wrong and your hurt feelings are right. Maybe your pride got injured, and maybe you found yourself in a spiritual wilderness. And maybe you're fasting. This is definitely not what you expected to hear from me today. So before you log off or turn off this live stream, I want you to hear from the Holy Spirit, not just from me, but to hear from the Holy Spirit. Maybe you are in the wrong to foster, nurse your hurt, offended self. The Lord does not want us to live in offense. And He wants us to walk under authority so we can walk in the authority. I have had seasons in my life when I was younger especially, where I went through wounding, where I was hurt by things that were said to me, by the things that were done to me, by my own mentor, my own pastor. And, my feelings were hurt. My destiny wasn't hurt. My destiny was being developed. but my feelings were being hurt. And there was a time where, I was kind of considering, I'm like, is the Lord really wants me to be under my pastor? And the devil would send those thoughts. In my case, I believe it was the devil. And he would plant those thoughts that, my pastor is too harsh with me, he's too mean with me. And because I was so emotional and I was so not developed in maturity, that these things, corrections, felt like I was being rejected. When I would get reproved, I would feel like I'm being destroyed. When pastor would correct a particular behavior, I would feel like he's actually, completely hurting all of my identity, destroying all of my identity. And then it took, of course, through a season of a little bit of suffering, submission, a season of humbling myself. I'm not talking about submitting to a toxic, abusive dictatorship. I'm talking about when we trim our ego, trim our pride, and we humble ourselves. Not just for the sake of pleasing God, which is important, but for the sake of birthing the promise we carry.